We are honored to have you join us for this thought-provoking discussion on the impact of the war in Ukraine on environmental heritage and citizens' health and how communities can take action for environmental justice. And today's lecture is an opportunity to foster knowledge, exchange, and understanding of Ukrainian citizen science initiatives, shedding light on key factors and nuances of citizen advocacy and empowerment for an environmentally just future in Ukraine. About plan of today's lecture, I want to tell you about our two parts of this event. We begin with Stefania Oikonomou and Katerina Zhuru from Web2Learn, who will present on citizen science for post-war environmental recovery. They will share examples of citizen science initiatives addressing environmental issues in Ukraine and, of course, highlighting the crucial role of citizen engagement in post-war recovery efforts. And we have the second part, part B. Following this, we are privileged to have Olena Kryvoruchkina, Deputy Head of the Parliamentary Committee of Environmental Policy and Nature Management and member of Ukrainian Parliament. She will speak on Ukrainian response and first steps of the environmental protection activities since the beginning of the Russian invasion. So let's start. Katerina and Stefania, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Katerina. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Together with Katerina Zhuru, the Managing Director of Web2Learn, we are very glad to welcome you in this lecture event about citizen science in health and environmental issues in Ukraine. Before moving into the detail and the core of this talk, I would like to give you a brief overview of how we ended up here, what's our connection with citizen science in Ukraine. Our starting point is October 2020, where CEOP's team gave its first workshop on this topic, so how to do citizen science in armed conflicts. This workshop was really inspiring to us at Web2Learn, and so we created a talk. We gave a talk about citizen science in Ukraine during the war in the framework of the Citizen Science Conference in Berlin in 2022. Then, as a natural consequence, the GROMADA project was developed, ideated by Katerina Zhuru, and this year the project gave its physical workshop on citizen science in Ukraine during the EXA conference. I would also like to inform you that currently we are organizing an expert legal workshop in June, as well as an online workshop for citizen science for environmental justice in Ukraine. Stay tuned. You see some links coming on in the chat for you to consult. Thank you, Katerina, for sharing. Now, by now, you have heard many times the word citizen science, but what does it really mean? And what is its connection with other two concepts that are used interchangeably, that of civilian science and civic monitoring? Let's find out together how these three connect to each other. Beginning with citizen science. So citizen science is about public participation in scientific research. Each of us can become a citizen scientist. It usually takes the form of data collection about a social or an environmental issue. Imagine that you want to set up a project with a friend or your fellow citizens about air quality in your area, in your neighborhood. So this initiative is counted as a citizen science initiative since you are collecting data through sensors or other devices that give you an overview of the quality of air in your neighborhood. To provide a common understanding of citizen science and its key components, the European Citizen Science Association has issued 10 principles of citizen science. And to give you an example of another citizen science initiative, I bring today the World Water Monitoring Day. During that day, thousands of volunteers worldwide are collecting water samples from their areas through water kits, and they're uploading the results in a global online platform like a big database with data about water quality from each part of the world. When it comes to civilian science now, we move into a conflict setting, a war zone, where the word civilian is a dominant one instead of citizen. Civilian science is a newly developed term and is used to describe people's engagement, people's participation in monitoring damages during war. As a newly developed concept, it needs still to be further investigated and studied, but so far we can say that civilian science can be used as a complementary source to official measurements and official assessments during war. Make sure also that to check a CEOPS team study about civilian science that will be also on your chat in a few moments. Our final third term, civic monitoring. Here we see that the word civic is replacing the word citizen, and that provides a more universal overview of who gets to participate in the process. And the word monitoring replacing science, emphasizing that the process and the value of monitoring and documenting a damage rather than advancing science itself. Civic environmental monitoring is about ordinary people monitoring through sensors or their senses the environmental damages. Anna Bertisuma has done great work on this civic monitoring field, so make sure you also check it. More links coming in the chat. Thank you again, Katerina. Now, you have seen that there are some commonalities between the three terms, all of them speaking about how ordinary people participate in scientific research, in monitoring environmental damages. This is an indicative, a preliminary table of what are some key differences, let's say, between three of the terms. What we would like you to take from this table here is that the differences are not about the approach that is adopted, but about the context where these initiatives are taking place. For example, civilian science is about public participation in a war zone, in conflict, rather than a peaceful local and social context. But let's talk about Ukraine and go into the main topic of today's talk. Despite the difficulties that the war has caused, someone would also argue why doing citizen science in a war context, is it even possible to do so? So in our case, the answer is quite clear. Yes, it is doable, and it's also valuable to do citizen science in such a context. First of all, because citizen science initiatives bring a very special social impact to the communities involved. Doing citizen science with communities in war means that you give people the tools to monitor damages themselves. You empower them to demand justice about the damages committed, and you also make them aware of the situation on the ground. Of course, there is value also for experts and researchers who are doing citizen science with communities in war zones, because this way they get more insights about new practices and how to engage with conflict-affected communities, and also how to deal with critical issues like data ethics, like privacy concerns, security concerns, all these things that provide new insights about inclusion and accessibility and participation in citizen science. Concretely, I would like to emphasize on this slide about what's going on now in Ukraine in terms of citizen science initiatives. And there is a great study led by Professor Maxim Soroka about citizen science initiatives in Ukraine and their current status. And we would like to bring some key insights from that. First of all, it's very positive that citizen science initiatives in Ukraine are not only existing, but they're also expanding influence to public environmental policy making despite difficulties by the war. Of course, it's important to highlight that there is still a long way for these initiatives to acquire full regulatory and legal recognition of their results. However, all the more authorities and people are becoming aware of the value of citizen participation in monitoring and documenting, reporting everyday damages in the environment within Ukrainian communities. Another interesting information the study provides is that most Ukrainian citizen science projects at the moment are about air and water quality monitoring. And of course, the study highlights key challenges which are naturally present in this troubling and challenging context. We can think of the safety of participants, so how to deal with safety issues that impede participation during conflict. We can think of governmental restrictions on information, the sensitive issue of disinformation, so it's even more difficult to have a trusted source of information about the data collected. And of course, the importance of keep supporting and motivating volunteer networks in territories that have just gained their freedom back. And of course, the lack of funding, which is an ongoing issue for these citizen science initiatives to scale up. From our experience in investigating citizen science initiatives in Ukraine, we have gathered some key reflections we would like to share with you. First of all, we see how important is closer collaboration with formal institutions, and that's all about being in contact with public authorities on the ground, make them aware of your project, your scopes, your objectives, and the data you're collecting. Again, I repeat that there are sensitive data about locations, and this also needs to keep authorities aware of what you're doing and for what reasons. Another important factor to have a successful citizen science project in a work zone is place attachment and sense of belonging. We cannot even imagine how it is to have all your area and your community being affected by war. So the project should really speak to the reality and the difficulties of those people. So, of course, most of participants are motivated to participate, to engage in such a project if it is about improvement and recovery of the environment in their area. So it's important that your project is about local conditions, about exploiting in a good way local knowledge and having a local impact to the lives of people on the ground. Another important factor not to forget is the role of the diaspora. We have seen also in other fields, not only in environmental issues, but I could also mention culture, how the role of Ukrainian diaspora has been fundamental in supporting initiatives in Ukraine and supporting more awareness raising at international level. Of course, this is also the same for citizen science initiatives in Ukraine. And so it's important to have good networking and to meet people and to collaborate with people in the diaspora that could be instrumental to expand and to enhance the impact of your project worldwide. But enough of talking of myself. It's time now to hear also from people on the ground. And we have now gathered for you 2 videos from people, Ukrainian people, presenting some of their actions. The first video comes from the Ukrainian State University of Science and Technology. And before launching it, I would also like to inform you that that's a 9-minute video. Of course, now we will display only the first minutes of it, but all these videos, both of them will be available to participants and registrants of today's lecture afterwards. So you have access to the video, the entire video, after the lecture.
Assistant Professor of Global Health and Civil Safety Department, Ukrainian State University of Science and Technology. First of all, I want to thank all allowed by the European Union citizens during the last 2 years for Ukraine. It's important for us. It's important for the preservation of democracy. Today I want to present a brief about citizen science initiatives in Ukraine as a special form of participatory democracy and research frame.
That was a short part of the video. As I said, the full video will be shared with you after the lecture. At this point, I would also like to invite you to share any comments or any questions in the chat. You can do so both in English or in Ukrainian, thanks to our Ukrainian live interpretation. I'm looking at the chat. Okay. Okay, I see no questions at the moment. Please don't hesitate to add any questions. I'll move on, but we're here to address all your questions. Let's move on also to the second video. It's a 2-minute video. I'll have it displayed all. It's important. It's interesting also here to see what students are doing in the Odessa State Environmental University. And I would also like to thank both Ukrainian partners for providing their videos today.
Імітуючи середовище проживання дикої зусиль
Okay. I'm sorry. Thanks again to Ukrainian colleagues for sending us these great videos. And I would also like to thank Maxim Soroka, who has also joined this lecture. Thank you very much, Maxim. And of course, you're welcome to take the floor and share with us your experiences and your comments on citizen science in Ukraine. Feel free. Hello, Maxim. Hello. And thank you also for the studies and all your work in Ukraine. Let's move on. And of course, a second message for everyone to share their comments, their ideas about citizen science in Ukraine. any experiences you would like to share, you're very, very welcome to share with us. Okay. Let's say wait for some seconds. Let's see if there are some reactions or some people wanting to share their feedback on what's been sold or any experiences, and we'll shortly move on. Of course, there's the possibility to add comments on the chat and also in the QA session. I see a question in the QA. What advice can you give to students to study this topic more effectively? Do you have any ideas for implementation? Thank you very much, Victoria, for the question. If I may share my short opinion, and then I would also welcome whoever would like to add anything, also especially from professional staff in Ukraine, but also anyone would like to give an input. Well, Victoria, from our experience, it's also about how educators, how your teachers in academia, for example, are aware of citizen science and how open they are to integrate, to adopt this more participatory approach to doing science. So of course, it's about students and students' willingness and motivation to join citizen science, but it's also most about how also your teacher, your educator, your professor is inclined and familiar with citizen science. Of course, I think that citizen science gives an opportunity from students, from ordinary people, to set up their own project. And that's, I think, a great opportunity also from anyone who is not really expert in citizen science. You don't have to be an expert in citizen science to set up your own project and to begin with your friends and your team and your co-students. So in my opinion, it's important to identify an issue you would like to set the project on, the topic there, and then the objectives. What do you want to achieve and why you're doing this? And then step by step, you can build, there are citizen science methodologies. There are many ways you can build your project on. Of course, it's important if you can be...
Можна додати?
Yes, Olena, thanks.
Can I add? Yes, Olena, please.
Olena, you would like to...
Да, дякую. Я хотіла
Yes,
сказати,
thank you. I would like to say you a couple of words from the point of view of a representative of pedagogic staff, as I was university lecturer, and from the point of view of my current occupation. At first, I'm really happy to greet the students and especially those who dedicate their time to document ecological losses. But to make it practical, I think there should be collaboration with central executive authorities of the city that coordinate this work. And in this direction, I am ready to be an interlocutor, to be a connector between you. I will tell about it later.
Thank you very much, Olena. Of course, we welcome anyone else who would like to add a comment to do so, and we will proceed. And throughout the webinar, also at the end, we have a QA session for everyone wanting to say, to share its input and feedback. Before giving you some final information on our upcoming initiatives, is there any other intervention or... Okay, I had the last check, no intervention at the moment. Okay, so before giving the floor to Olena, and about that, I would also like to inform you that Olena will give her talk in Ukrainian, so there is an English translation, for English-speaking audience during Olena's talk. You should be able to see the interpretation in your Zoom panel. But anyways, I just would like to share with you some upcoming information and events. So first of all, if you know any citizen participation, citizen observations, actions in Ukraine, would really like to hear from you. And so you can find in the chat in a few minutes a link to a Google form that where you can add any input, any links, any experience you would like to share about ongoing or past citizen science initiatives in Ukraine. That would really much enrich our understanding of what's going on in the ground in Ukraine in this field. And second, there will be another link for you for another Google form for you to register in our upcoming June 14 workshop for citizen science in Ukraine. And we are really looking forward to seeing you there and exchange on what else can be done, how we can expand and strengthen and support from our side citizen science initiatives in Ukraine. Thank you very much for following so far. Thank you, Katerina, for sharing. Thank you all. I'll be delighted to give the floor to Olena for her talk.
Дякую, пані Стефанія.
Thank you, Ms. Stefania. At first, I wanted to express my gratitude to the organizer of this webinar for actualization of really crucial questions and issues. They are really essential. Ecological context of war and combatant activities, it is so key concept because to recover damaged bridges, structures, buildings with donor assistance, international European assistance, we can do in short term. But to recover ecology, hectares of forests that have been burned, everything, we need thousands of years. And this aspect is really very crucial. We should stress it out. That's why thank you so much for actualization of such important ecological issues and for the involvement of the public sector. And as Ms. Stefania has said, as for public involvement into what's going on in Ukraine during the full-scale invasion, I would like to illustrate on some ongoing example. For example, unfortunately, in Ukraine, the state of the environment has always been critical. It was after the industrial pollution as a result of, and because of we had this problem with the waste, but even during the war period, we adopted Euro-integrational law on waste disposal that will be the foundation for other laws and bylaws. But unfortunately, all our issues that we resolve due to Euro-integration choice of Ukraine, they were scaled because of Russian invasion. Next slide, please. The previous one, please. No, previous. The second slide. No.
Okay,
Go back.
give me a second. Olena, you want the previous ones?
Yes, the previous. The second one, please.
Okay.
This is. So, I wanted to show you the following, that on the 5th day of the war, merely in our eyes, we saw how the oil deposit was burning near Kiev. You see, no photo can just show you what was there in reality. Next slide, please. And that's why, when we saw it, we were aware of the fact that this war, this aggression, poses a threat to all living organisms, not only to infrastructural objects, but to all living organisms. That's why on the 2nd of March, on the basis of state ecological inspection, we founded the operational headquarters of the fixation of ecological crimes. The main tasks were fixation and documenting of ecological crimes, accounting, and creation of the unified register of losses. And here the public sector participated to the full extent. Even international activity assesses at a very high level the activity of our headquarters, because it became a communication platform. It united not only representatives of the state ecological inspection, and this is the only body, the only agency in Ukraine that can fix and document ecological losses of Russian invasion and aggression. Also, there is specialized ecological prosecutor's office, the Council for Defense of Ukraine, Office of Prosecutor General. So different stakeholders who were united by the same goal to see, to count, to estimate the ecological losses, and public sector participated very much. Most territories that hosted the biggest ecological losses were temporarily occupied. That's why we tried to collect the data not only from our own experience, from taking samples on sites, going to the sites with the law enforcement bodies, but we also obtained a lot of messages from people. There were hotline numbers, emails, chatbots, and each citizen of Ukraine had opportunity and access to give any information about ecological damage and loss. And today there are 5,000 cases of addressing citizens who reported about ecological crimes. Yes, today we have the volume of ecological losses accrued to 250 billion euros. We understand that this number will rise when the occupied territories will be liberated. I can give you an example. It was said that in the Sea of Azov, there is a total annihilation of fishes, but we don't know what is the reason. We can just listen to these rumors. You know that on the 10th of March 2022, the civil vessel in Black Sea was hit by the vessel. It sank, and there was a big oil spot that covered 2,000-3,000 kilometers. These are really very adverse effects, but we can just observe them at distance. We cannot see what is the reason why fish species are killed in the Sea of Azov. We don't know what chemicals are there, but there are a lot of cases signaled and reported by the citizens of Ukraine, and a lot of these cases were put into this database. Next slide, please. What issues have we faced when this operative headquarters entered in vigor? I said that it united different stakeholders who had the common goal to resolve and to document the environmental damages, but we didn't have methodology how to count, how to estimate these ecological damages and losses. And by the way, the world doesn't have the widely implied and applied methodologies like this, because we were not prepared to the war. That's why, based on the operative headquarters, we formed an expert working group from 80 experts, national and international, who were distributed to different resource sectors like water, air, soil, etc. And they worked on the estimate methodology of assessment of environmental damages and losses. Now they are officially adopted by the government of Ukraine, but even now we stress that these methodologies, they are not perfect. They were formed in a very fast way. They should be tested. And we address all the international institutions and agencies for the audit, for revising of these methodologies, for their improvements. They are needed. They were needed at the beginning of war to make it clear for us what is the scale and what is the volume of these damages and losses. But now, when we have intention to address the international courts on environmental damages, we should improve our methodologies. That's why this issue of formulation and revision of our methodologies with their further improvements is very essential and crucial. Next slide, please. I would like to show you on these slides these moments that are really very important for Ukraine. There is very mass deforestation because of burning out, because of combatant activities. A lot of forests are mined. 3 million hectares of forest in Ukraine were affected by war. This is very huge number. We had issues with forests even at the beginning of war because we wanted to enhance the forest zones, but now we have a lot of issues. The next slide, please. The next big challenge for us, because of the emissions to the atmosphere, was burning of oil depots. It was really very terrible because due to Russian shelling of Ukraine, more than 30 oil depots were burned, and huge amount of pollutant were emitted into the atmosphere. It is impossible to count the accurate number because not all the oil depots were on the territory under Ukrainian control. We can just do some estimates, indirect estimates of them. Next slide, please. I wanted to show you this slide very much. This is after the fire of the oil depot in my native city and the city of our president Volodymyr Zelensky. This is Kryvoruchkina. You see, these were 100-meter tanks with oil. You see that there are only rests of them. You see that the impact to ecology is critical. People were not affected, but when you are there, all your senses, all your body parts, they make it clear that there is a large scale of the ecological issues. Next slide, please. What the students have said about flora and wildlife, we have a lot of examples. I don't want to overload you with numbers because they are not finalized. They will increase, unfortunately, and when we improve our methodologies, these numbers will increase very much. But there are some examples that can be seen and can be felt by not only Ukrainians, but also by other countries. I say always, when the combatant activities are limited by the borders of Ukraine, ecological crimes of Russians are not limited by the borders. And these oil stain in the Black Sea, the marine ecosystems from Bulgaria, Romania, and maybe Turkey suffered also and were affected due to the fact that a lot of military marine equipment is in the waters of the Black Sea. We observe the excessive killing of dolphins on the banks and shores of Ukraine, Bulgaria, and Romania. And even we made autopsy of these dolphins to understand what was the reason of their death. And we understand that due to their ultrasonic communication, they mixed their ultrasonic communication with the communication of warships. And there are other types of pollutions by chemicals. I mean, the Black Sea, there are mines, and these mines that are untied, they can't be just come from the shore to the shore, and it will be a big threat to recover the security component for our marine territories. Next slide, please. As I have already said, we organized a working group of experts, and under the guidance of the operational headquarters who helped us to work on methodologies. They were volunteers, so they were not paid. And besides the resource groups, because I have said that there were subgroups, yes, about the soil, about water, etc. And there was a group of the legal experts of international law who also made research and surveyed military case of reimbursement in Iraq, Kuwait, Costa Rica, Nicaragua. You see it on the one slide. On the next slide, you will see the Costa Rica, Nicaragua case. And by the way, so you see that Kuwait claimed the big sum for ecological crimes, but he obtained the reimbursement only by 6%. We started to study these cases to understand what are the reasons between the claim and between the judgment. And we found out that even methodologies, even estimates, is not so important as what has been said by the Odessa University students as fixation and documenting of the crimes and independent assessment of these ecological crimes. Independent, not from our point of view, because we are Ukrainians. Next slide, please. And that's why when we saw this problem, together with my colleague Yuri Kryvoruchkina, we registered in the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine the draft of the resolution adopted unanimously by our parliament. It was addressing of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine to parliaments of other countries, to General Assembly of the UNO, to different agencies and international institutions with the request to create international independent ecological mission. And it was possible to create that these people could do it also remotely, but we had to have such independent monitoring mission. Unfortunately, this resolution was adopted in March 2022. Now we have the year 2024, and we cannot talk about the establishment of this unite agency that would embody all these tasks and responsibilities and mission. I would kindly ask all people who can do something, let's do something, let's knock at the door, because we need such organization, we need such establishment. It could be formal one, informal one, it can be at the level of governments, it can be at the level of non-governmental organizations, on the level of experts, but such independent monitoring mission should be established to create a powerful platform for the further reimbursement of ecological losses when addressing the international courts. Next slide, please. And to wrap up what we have done, I mean our operational headquarters, that we counted and we estimated not only the actual data, but also it was formed by public sector, their reports and addresses of public people. And now we have estimated the level of 50 billion euros as the level of ecological losses, but this is not finalized sum. The working group has been created, and our collaboration with such organizations as UNEP, UNDP, OECD, UNICEF, OSCE. So a lot of organizations have been created, have been attracted, have been involved, and I think that we have done very big contribution to the fact that on November 2022, there has been adopted resolution of the UN General Assembly for the estimates of the ecological losses. We haven't established the independent ecological mission, but we address the international community, and there is resolution that will estimate these ecological losses. Next slide, please. As I have already said, we are trying to amplify our international collaboration. My personal impression as a person who, since the first days of the war, has been involved into these assessments on sites, etc., what I have heard from students who are trying to be involved into this process, we need harmonize and coordinate and unite all our efforts. We shouldn't double some activities. We shouldn't have a lot of different registers of ecological losses. So based on ecological inspection, based on ecological headquarters, let's systemize all the alternative estimates of the remote ecological losses done by international organizations. I think it is one of our main tasks, one of the important ones. I know that there is UNEP program, UN program on environmental protection. They opened their mini office in Ukraine, and the executive director came to director, and I even have a photo. We communicated with her. It was during the air alert. We were in the bomb shelter, but even such communication provided results. And now in Ukraine, the representative of the UNO, of the UNEP program, OSCE, OECD also support different projects. They give their experts to develop and to enhance and harmonize our legal framework to meet the requirements of the EU. The big achievement from our side is the membership of Ukraine in the international organization IMPEL that unites all the state ecological inspections of the European Union member states. We went to this assembly of the IMPEL. We obtained invitation on the 7th of June 2023. But when we were on our way, we knew about the Novakakhovka Dam. And when we addressed to the best experts who had the best practices, so we just did everything. We changed our speeches. We asked what to do, and we had sincere answer. We don't know. Because such a tragedy has never been felt by European countries. Thanks God it didn't happen to Europe. But I would like to stress attention that the scale of these problems is really very essential, and it gives us necessity to get united. And as for the students, I would like to say that during the wartime, we launched the pilot project, recovery of the Institute of the Civil Ecological Inspectors. So we fix and document all the losses. I am sure and I am ready to be your connector between this institute and you. You can do it what you are doing together with them. They have passed through training in ecological inspection. They have listened to different seminars, and they now have possibility to connect the theoretical background with the practical inspections. So it is just a pilot project in Kryvyi Rih and Kryvyi Rih district. Then we scaled it to Poltava region, Ivano-Frankivsk region, Kharkiv region. OSCE supported us and they provided training for our ecological inspectors. And it would be really very cool to involve a lot of young people. You know, our ecological inspectors mostly are young people, and that's why we are ready to support young people. I think this is the project that we can unite on and we can promote it for our future, to make our future better, to make our future developed. Next slide, please. I also wanted to say that despite all our challenges, despite all our threats, and we have a lot of threats, just believe we have a lot of them because we live under such conditions. Today we had a meeting of ecological committee and ecological committee of Ukraine and of Estonia. I had a topic about emissions from potable pollutants. And I'm thinking, what can we say? Because before we had general 55% emissions from vehicles. And now how can we count it? Because there is a lot of military equipment, military cars and vehicles, ours and Russians. And now we import some automobiles, some vehicles with the status Euro 1, Euro 2, because they don't have very big lifespan. But despite this fact, we choose Europe. We understand that we should implement all and we should meet the requirements of the green protocols. We have very open reforms towards harmonization. We are really very open to any collaboration. And we are ready also to implement any new technologies. There is the program about the implementation of new technologies, new accessible technologies, and their management. There is also a reform on ecological control and checks. And you know, we have very good dialogue with public sector. Our public sector is involved into draft laws elaboration, into discussions, and we are ready to take any your pieces of advice in these directions, because this openness is really very sincere. We are making our first steps. Frankly speaking, the previous governments were not interested in ecological questions, and they didn't demonstrate any democratic approach and openness that we have today. Next slide, please. I would like to pass to the more scaled ecological catastrophes. This is the Kakhovka dam explosion and the fact that we are in a risk zone, that Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is under the threat of occupation. And just believe me, in these moments, we act as the situation gives us opportunities, but we try to be direct. We are supported by international organizations, by international community, but the challenges that we have, they are so huge, they are so serious, and that have never been faced by our neighbors. And we should elaborate the mechanism, the response mechanism together. You know, when there was Kakhovka Dam catastrophe, there were a lot of reports about the fact that deserts can be formed in this place. But now there are a lot of trees there. And I would like to say that when there was explosion of this Kakhovka Dam, and we saw a lot of land there, what Ukrainians did, they planted their potatoes and they harvested it. So they decided to use this land despite the difficulties. Next slide, please. We are trying not to lose our optimism, but the first week after the Kakhovka Dam tragedy, our ecological commission, the representatives of ecological inspection visited Kherson and Kherson region. It was terrible time. There were terrible sights. It looks like fearfully, and you feel this fear. And the ecological inspectors were under shelling, and we tried to collect the samples. We visited the Kherson region, the Mykolaiv region, the regions that were affected by the explosion of Kakhovka Dam. We took the samples from Odessa ecological inspection from the Black Sea. So everything. We tried to visit all the crucial places, burial places, and a lot of things, a lot of places were just covered by us. Now we have more favorable situation, but we should create different response and task force groups. We should create opportunities for information, the public sector, because just in case of any force majeure or emergencies, we should react in a very fast way. Next slide, please. Here I would like to show you the following, because you know that Kryvyi city and district were affected by the explosion of the hydrological water power plant. And you know that it deprived people of water supply in the number of 1.5 million people. So they were without water supply. And these photos were done by myself in the city of Kryvyi Rih and the region of the district of Kryvyi Rih. So we understand that this is a big catastrophe for the territorial communities. Next slide, please. I also wanted to say one more thing. We solved the issue of the fact that people were without people. You know that the water supply was just for 1-2 hours during day and night, and it was of really low quality because we took it from technical sources, just for some everyday household needs. We resolved this question on different levels. We even brought there different tanks. We resolved this issue due to donors and international partners. 40 mobile purification stations were brought to Kryvyi Rih district. Then 15 automobiles, 15 trucks were given to us for distribution of water, but these are operational activities. I also want to stress your attention to the efforts of members of parliament, of executive agencies and authorities. They coordinated their efforts and we changed the water supply pipeline very drastically. And now the issue is addressed. We don't know what will be the next challenges because we live in new reality. We cannot forecast anything. If we cannot forecast anything, we should build up very powerful mechanism that will be able to cope and to respond to any challenges. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Олена, щиро дякуємо, пані Олено, за ваш час, ваш виступ.
Thank you so much, Ms. Olena, for
Мати сьогодні змогу
your
послухати
speech. It's a
вашу
big
доповідь. Це було
honor for
передусім
us to listen
неймовірно
to your
і
speech today. It was
надихаюче
fantastic
на
and it was really
майбутнє.
very inspiring.
Також ми безмежно вдячні нашим
Also,
спікерам,
we are so grateful
які
to our
хостили
speakers from
сьогодні
Web to Learn who
захід.
hosted
Катерина Жук,
this webinar.